The massive crystal dome of the Galactic Council Station floated silently in the void between stars. Inside, creatures from dozens of different worlds sat in their specialized chairs, each designed for their unique biology. The air hummed with translation devices, working overtime to convert thousands of different languages into something everyone could understand. Ambassador Veltar stood at the center of the chamber, his blue skin glowing softly under the artificial lights. His forearms moved gracefully as he activated the holographic display above his head. The image that appeared made several council members shift uncomfortably in their seats. "Fellow beings," Veltar began, his voice carrying easily through the chamber's acoustics, "we have discovered something that requires immediate attention. 3 cycles ago, our long-range scouts found a new species in the Outer Rim territories." Hologram showed a small blue and green planet orbiting a yellow star. It looked peaceful enough, but the data streaming alongside the image told a different story. "They call themselves humans," Veltar continued. "At first glance, they appeared to be a typical developing civilization. They have achieved faster-than-light travel only recently and have established colonies on 7 nearby worlds." A murmur ran through the assembled delegates. New species were discovered regularly. Most were welcomed into the galactic community after a period of observation and cultural exchange. However, Veltar's voice took on a more serious tone. "Our detailed scans have revealed something deeply concerning about their military capabilities." The hologram shifted to show sleek metal ships bristling with weapons. Unlike the elegant curved vessels favored by most galactic civilizations, these human ships looked brutal and efficient. Every line spoke of violence and destruction. Commander Hakarin, representing the Military Assessment Division, rose from his seat. His reptilian features were drawn into a frown as he studied the data. "I have reviewed these scans personally," he announced. "What we are seeing defies every principle of civilized warfare." The chamber fell silent except for the soft worry of life support systems. "Explain," ordered Prime Counselor Yathara from her elevated platform. Hakarin gestured to the display, and the image zoomed in on one of the human warships. "This vessel, which they call a heavy cruiser, carries enough firepower to destroy a small moon. Not disable it, not capture it, completely destroy it." Gasps and electronic squeaks of alarm filled the chamber. Several of the more peaceful species began rapid conversations among themselves. "Surely there must be some mistake," called out Counselor Mirren from the Talani delegation. Her species had not fought a war in over 3,000 years. No civilized being would build such weapons. Veltar's expression grew even more grim. "Unfortunately, there is no mistake. Every human military vessel we have observed follows the same pattern. They do not carry stunning weapons for capturing enemy ships. They do not have boarding equipment for taking prisoners. They do not even have basic life support systems for rescuing survivors." The implications hung heavy in the air. "Their ships are designed for one purpose only," Hakarin continued. "Complete annihilation of anything they consider a threat. We found weapons that can crack continental plates, missiles that can boil away entire oceans, and something our computers can only classify as stellar disruptors." An elderly delegate from the Vorthan Republic raised his hand. "What about their ground forces? Surely they follow more reasonable practices in planetary warfare." The answer came from a new voice. Intelligence Officer Zixara had remained silent until now, but her data was perhaps the most disturbing. Of all, their ground forces are equally concerning. They have weapons that can level entire cities in seconds. Their soldiers carry personal firearms that can penetrate any known armor, and their doctrine. She paused as if struggling to find the right words. "Their doctrine calls for something they term total war." "What does that mean?" asked Prime. Counselor Yathara. "It means they do not fight limited conflicts over territory or resources," Zixara explained. "When humans go to war, they fight to completely destroy their enemy's ability to continue fighting. They target not just military assets, but industrial centers, communication networks, and leadership structures. Their goal is not victory, it is the absolute elimination of opposition." The chamber erupted in worried chatter. This was not how galactic warfare was conducted. For millennia, conflicts between species had been carefully managed affairs with strict rules about acceptable targets and methods. Wars were fought over specific goals and ended with negotiated settlements that allowed both sides to maintain their dignity and most of their territory. "How many of these humans are there?" asked a delegate from the back of the chamber. "Current estimates place their total population at approximately 12 billion across their 8 worlds," Veltar replied. "Their industrial capacity is growing rapidly, and they are producing new warships at an alarming rate." Prime Counselor Yathera called for order as the discussions grew more heated. "The question before us is simple," she announced. "Do we attempt to make peaceful contact with this species and try to integrate them into galactic society, or do we classify them as an existential threat to all civilized life?" The silence that followed was profound. For the first time in anyone's memory, the Galactic Council faced a species that might be too dangerous to coexist with. The debate that would determine humanity's fate was about to begin. Captain Minho stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, watching the strange alien ship approach through the main viewscreen. The vessel looked nothing like any human design he had ever seen. Where human ships were built with straight lines and sharp angles, this alien craft flowed like water frozen in motion. Soft blue lights pulsed along its hull in patterns that seemed almost alive. "Sir, they are sending another message," reported Lieutenant Hajin from her position at the communications station. "They say they come in peace and request permission to dock with our ship." Minho nodded slowly. 3 days ago, this alien vessel had appeared at the edge of human space, broadcasting messages of friendship in dozens of languages. The translation computers had worked for hours to decode their speech, but the meaning was clear enough. These beings wanted to make first contact with humanity. "Grant them permission," Minho ordered. "Have Commander Tae-woo prepare the diplomatic reception bay. Make sure our guests feel welcome." An hour later, Minho found himself face to face with creatures that looked like they had stepped out of a dream. Ambassador Veltar was tall and graceful, with blue skin that seemed to glow from within. His forearms moved with elegant precision as he spoke, and his large eyes held intelligence and what appeared to be genuine friendliness. "Captain Minho," Veltar said through his translation device, "I bring greetings from the Galactic Council. We are honored to make contact with your species." "The honor is ours," Minho replied with a smile. "We have wondered for many years if we were alone in the universe. It brings us great joy to know we are not." The other aliens in Veltar's group seemed equally fascinating. There was Counselor Mirren, whose species looked like living crystals that sang when they spoke. Commander Hackern resembled a large lizard, but wore a uniform that marked him as a military officer. Several others represented species that Minho could not even begin to classify. "We would be very interested to learn about your civilization," Veltar continued. "Perhaps you could show us your ship. We're always eager to see how different species solve the challenges of space travel." Minho's smile widened. "Of course. Commander Tae-woo will give you the full tour. I think you will find our technology quite interesting." What happened next would be remembered as one of the greatest diplomatic disasters in galactic history. Commander Tae-woo led the alien delegation through the corridors of the Defiance with obvious pride. He showed them the crew quarters, the hydroponics bays where they grew food, and the recreation areas where off-duty personnel relaxed. The aliens seemed impressed by human efficiency and engineering. Then they reached the weapons bay. "This is our main armament," Tae-woo explained cheerfully as they entered a vast chamber filled with massive guns and missile launchers. Each of these cannons can fire antimatter shells with a yield of about 50 megatons. On full automatic, we can level a medium-sized city in under 10 minutes. The aliens stopped walking. Their translation devices worked frantically to make sure they had understood correctly. "Did you say antimatter?" asked Veltar, his voice very quiet. "Oh yes," replied Ensign Donghayan, who had joined the tour. "Antimatter is much more efficient than the old nuclear warheads we used to use. These babies can punch through any known armor and create beautiful secondary explosions." Counselor Mirren made a sound like breaking glass. Her crystal body had changed from a soft blue to a harsh red color, and these Commander Hakron pointed to a rack of sleek missiles with shaking hands. "Those are our planet crackers, Taewoo," said with obvious pride. "Full spread can break a world's crust and expose the molten core. We mostly use them for mining operations on dead worlds, but they work great for base clearing too." The silence that followed was broken only by the hum of the ship's engines and the quiet beeping of various electronic systems. You carry weapons that can destroy entire planets?" Veltar whispered. "Well, small planets," corrected Lieutenant Kyung-Soo helpfully. "For the big ones, you need the stellar torpedoes. Those are stored in Bay 7. Stellar torpedoes?" Mirren's voice had become so high-pitched that the translators were having trouble keeping up. "They can make a star go supernova," explained Taewoo matter-of-factly. "It's about 6 hours from detonation to full stellar collapse. Great for system denial operations." Ambassador Veltar sat down heavily on a nearby crate. Had turned a sickly yellow color. "This is all standard equipment?" he asked weakly. "On our heavy cruisers, yes," confirmed Taewoo. "The lighter ships only carry continent busters and atmospheric scrubbers. We believe in being prepared for any situation. Prepared for what situation requires destroying entire star systems." Hakron demanded. Captain Minho, who had arrived to check on the tour, looked puzzled by the question. "Any situation where our enemies might use those star systems as bases," he replied simply. "If someone threatens Earth or our colonies, we want to be able to remove that threat completely and permanently." "This is not defense," Veltar said in a horrified whisper. "This is the power to commit genocide on a galactic scale." "Genocide?" Minho frowned. "These are defensive weapons. Only use them when attacked first." "Defensive weapons that can sterilize solar systems," Mirren repeated in a broken voice. "What good would a defensive weapon be if it could not end the threat?" asked Minho, genuinely confused by their reaction. The aliens looked at each other with expressions of pure terror. They had come expecting to find a primitive species that could be guided into galactic civilization. Instead, they had discovered something far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. The conference room aboard the UES Defiance had never felt so tense. Admiral Sujin sat across the polished metal table from the alien delegation, her hands folded calmly in front of her. The aliens, however, looked anything but calm. Ambassador Veltar's blue skin had turned an unhealthy shade of green in Counselor. Mirren's crystal body flickered with nervous red light. Admiral Veltar began carefully. "We need to discuss what we saw in your weapons bay." The other members of the Galactic Council are concerned. Admiral Sujin nodded. "I understand. Commander Taewoo tells me you were surprised by our defensive capabilities?" "Defensive." Commander Hakron's voice cracked. "You carry weapons that can destroy entire star systems. How is that defensive?" "Because we only use them when someone attacks us first," replied Admiral Sujin simply. "We do not start wars, but we do end them." The translation devices worked overtime as the aliens exchanged rapid conversations in their own languages. Finally, Counselor Myron spoke up, her voice like wind chimes in a storm. "Admiral, in all our centuries of galactic civilization, we have never encountered a species that builds weapons of such finality. When we fight wars, we target only military assets. We avoid populated areas. We follow strict codes of honor that limit casualties." Colonel Jae Sung, who had been standing quietly by the wall, stepped forward. "And how long do your wars last?" The question seemed to surprise the aliens. Veltar consulted a device on his wrist. "The average galactic conflict runs for 47 standard years. Some have lasted over a century." 47 years, repeated Admiral Sujin softly. "Generations of beings born into war, raised in war, dying in war. How many total casualties do you estimate from these long conflicts?" "Well, that depends on the scale of the conflict," Hakron replied. "A typical territorial dispute might claim 50 to 60 million lives over its duration." Lieutenant Commander Myung looked up from her datapad. "Admiral, our records show that the last major human conflict, World War III, lasted 8 months and resulted in 12 million casualties. After that, We developed our current military doctrine." The aliens stared at her in confusion. "You see," Admiral Sujin continued, "we learned something important from our history. Long wars cause more suffering than short ones. When conflict becomes unavoidable, it is better to end it quickly and decisively than to let it drag on for decades." "But the weapons you carry could destroy entire civilizations," protested Veltar. "Yes," agreed Admiral Sujin. "And because everyone knows this, they are less likely to start a war with us in the first place." The concept seemed to baffle the aliens completely. Colonel J soon moved to the wall display and activated a holographic chart. "Let me show you something." This is a comparison of human conflicts versus galactic conflicts over the past 1,000 years. The display showed two sets of data. The galactic conflicts appeared as long, steady lines stretching across decades. The human conflicts appeared as sharp spikes that ended quickly. "Your wars last longer, but they never truly end," Jae-soon explained. "You fight for a few years, sign a treaty, rebuild your forces, and fight again. The same enemies, the same territories, the same reasons, generation after generation. Because we follow civilized rules of engagement," Hakron insisted. "Rules that ensure wars become generational traditions instead of resolved problems," Mi-young replied from her seat. "Admiral." Sujin leaned forward. "Tell me, in your 47-year wars, how many children grow up never knowing peace? How many families are destroyed by prolonged conflict? How many worlds are slowly poisoned by decades of fighting?" The aliens fell silent. "Our philosophy is different," Sujin continued. "We believe that if you must fight, you should fight to win completely and quickly, not to send a message, not to claim territory, not to prove a point. You fight to end the war permanently." "That sounds like the philosophy of monsters," whispered Counselor Mirren. "Perhaps," Sujin replied calmly. "But our monsters end wars in months instead of decades. Our monsters prevent future wars by making the cost too terrible to contemplate." Captain Minho, who had been listening quietly, spoke up. "When I was young, my grandfather told me stories about the old days when humans fought each other constantly. Small wars, big wars, wars that lasted so long people forgot why they started. Then we learned to build weapons so terrible that no one dared use them, and that brought peace," asked Veltar skeptically. "For over 200 years, humans have not fought a major war among ourselves," Minho replied. "Our weapons became so powerful that war became impossible to survive. So we stopped having wars. You achieved peace through fear," Hakron observed. "Achieved peace through certainty," corrected Colonel Jae-sung. "The certainty that any war would end badly for everyone involved." Admiral Sujin stood up and walked to the window that showed the vast emptiness of space. "Your galactic civilization has been fighting the same wars for thousands of years. Territory changes hands, rulers rise and fall, but the fighting never stops. You have civilized warfare, but you have not civilized peace." She turned back to face the alien delegation. "We offer you something different, not the promise that we will never fight, but the promise that if fighting becomes necessary, it will end quickly and permanently." The silence stretched on for long minutes. Finally, Ambassador Veltar spoke, in a voice barely above a whisper. "What you are describing is not warfare. It is the power to end entire civilizations." "Yes," Admiral Sujin agreed simply. "And sometimes that is exactly what peace requires." The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been going on for 6 straight days. The great crystal chamber buzzed with worried voices as representatives from dozens of species argued about what to do. With the humans, sleep cycles were forgotten as delegates debated through multiple day and night periods. War Marshal Krikstar of the Kronari Empire stood at his speaking platform, his armored body gleaming under the chamber lights.
The Kronari were known throughout
the galaxy as the most aggressive species in the Council, but even they followed the traditional rules of warfare. "Fellow beings," Krikstar announced, his voice booming through the translation systems, "we cannot allow this human threat to continue. They are not warriors, they are planet killers. I propose we deal with them before they become too strong to stop." A wave of concerned murmurs swept through the chamber. Several of the more peaceful species shifted uncomfortably in their seats. "You are suggesting we attack them without provocation?" asked Counselor Mirren, her crystal body flickering with alarmed colors. "I am suggesting we defend ourselves," Krikstar replied firmly. "These humans build weapons that can destroy entire star systems. They think war should end with the complete destruction of their enemies. How long before they decide we are their enemies?" Prime Counselor Yathara called for order from her elevated platform. "The humans have made no aggressive moves toward any member species. They have not even left their small corner of space yet," growled Krikstar. "But when they do, it will be too late to stop them. I have seen their weapon specifications. Their smallest warship carries more firepower than our entire battle fleets." Ambassador Veltar, who had returned from his meeting with the humans just 2 days ago, stood to address the chamber. His blue skin still looked pale from his encounter with human military doctrine. "War Marshal Krikstar speaks from fear, but perhaps his fear is justified," Veltar said slowly. "I have spoken with these humans personally. They're not evil beings, but their way of thinking about warfare is completely alien to everything. We understand about civilized conflict and teach them our ways," suggested a delegate from the Peaceful Coalition. "Show them how proper wars should be fought." "That is the problem," Veltar replied. "They believe their way is better. They showed me statistics proving that their short, decisive wars cause fewer total casualties than our longer, civilized conflicts." The chamber erupted in arguments. Some species called for immediate diplomatic efforts to change human thinking. Others supported Krikstar's call for preemptive action. A few suggested complete isolation, hoping the humans would stay in their own territory forever. War Marshal Krikstar waited for the noise to die down before speaking again. "Words will not solve this problem. These humans understand only force. I will take my third fleet to one of their outer colonies and show them how real galactic warfare is conducted. When they see the power of proper military tactics, they will learn to respect our ways." "That could start a war," warned Counselor Mirren. "A small war now is better than galactic extinction later," Krikstar replied. "I will use minimal force. Against a lightly defended target, just enough to prove that their overwhelming weapons cannot defeat superior strategy and experience." Despite protests from several peaceful species, the Council voted to allow Krikstar's demonstration. Many representatives believed that showing the humans the reality of galactic military power would convince them to abandon their dangerous weapon systems. 3 days later, War Marshal Krikstar's third fleet dropped out of hyperspace near the human colony world of New Busan, 60 of the galaxy's most advanced. Warships formed a perfect battle formation around the small planet. Krikstar had brought enough firepower to overwhelm any defense the humans might have. The colony's defensive force consisted of just 4 ships orbiting the planet. They looked tiny compared to the massive Kronari fleet. Captain Wujin stood on the bridge of the colonial defense ship Inshin, studying the alien fleet through his view screen. His crew moved efficiently around him, preparing their weapon systems with calm professionalism. "Sir, the aliens are broadcasting a message," reported Lieutenant Kyung-soo from the communications station. "Put it through." War Marshal Krikstar's voice filled the bridge. "Human vessels. This is War Marshal Krikstar of the Kronar Empire. We are here to conduct a military demonstration. Surrender your ships and evacuate your colony, and no harm will come to your civilians." Captain Wujin considered the message for a moment. Signal response. War Marshal Krikstar. "This is Captain Wujin of the Human Colonial Defense Force. You are ordered to leave this system immediately. This is your only warning." Krikstar's laughter echoed through the communication channel. 4 small ships against 60 battle cruisers? Hume, you are either very brave or very stupid. "Perhaps both," Wujin replied calmly. "But you are still ordered to leave." What happened next lasted exactly 17 minutes and 12 seconds. The Kronari fleet attacked with perfect coordination, using tactics refined over thousands of years of galactic warfare. Their weapons were designed to disable rather than destroy following the traditional codes of honorable combat. They expected to quickly overwhelm the small human force and accept their surrender instead. They discovered what human defensive doctrine actually meant in practice. The four human ships did not maneuver like traditional warships. They did not attempt to protect themselves or retreat to better positions. They simply targeted the largest concentrations of enemy vessels and fired there. Main weapons. The results were catastrophic for the Chronari fleet. Ships that had survived dozens of previous battles simply ceased to exist, torn apart by weapons that seemed to unravel matter itself. The careful battle formations collapsed as entire squadrons vanished in bursts of superheated plasma. War Marshal Krickstar's flagship lasted the longest, but even it could not withstand the focused fire of human antimatter cannons. His final transmission was cut short as his ship exploded in a brilliant flash of light. Captain Wu Jin watched the last pieces of debris scatter into space. "Damage report," he called calmly. "Two ships report minor hull scoring from debris impacts," replied Lieutenant Kung Su. "No casualties, sir," signaled the Galactic Council. Wu Jin ordered. "Inform them that the Chronari demonstration has been concluded." 6 months had passed since what the galaxy now called the Chronari incident. The great crystal chamber of the Galactic Council looked different now. Where once hundreds of delegates had filled the seats with confident chatter, only the essential representatives remained, and they spoke in quiet, worried voices. Admiral Su Jin walked slowly to the center of the chamber, her footsteps echoing in the unusual silence. Every alien eye followed her movement. These beings who had once looked at humans with curiosity or fear now watched her with something much more complex, a mixture of terror and grudging respect. Prime. Counselor Yathera spoke first, her voice carefully controlled. "Admiral Su Jin, we have asked you here to discuss the future relationship between humanity and the galactic community." "I am listening," Su Jin replied simply. Ambassador Veltar stood from his seat, his blue skin still showing the pale patches that had appeared after his first encounter with human military philosophy. "The destruction of the Chronari Third Fleet has changed things." War Marshal Krickstar was considered one of the finest military minds in the galaxy. His fleet was equipped with our most advanced weapons and shields, and yet they lasted only 17 minutes against 4 human ships, added Commander Hakron, his reptilian features drawn with worry. Admiral Su Jin nodded. Captain Wu Jin is a competent officer, but he was commanding colonial defense vessels, not frontline warships. If the Chronari had attacked one of our core worlds, the engagement would have lasted considerably less time. The translation devices struggled to keep up as several alien species began rapid conversations among themselves. The implications of her words were clear to everyone. "We need to discuss what happens next," said Counselor Mirren, her crystal body flickering with nervous energy. "The galaxy has never faced a situation like this before." "What situation is that?" asked Su Jin. "A species that possesses the power to destroy galactic civilization," replied Yethera bluntly. Admiral Su Jin was quiet for a long moment, considering her words carefully. "Prime Counselor, may I ask you something? In the 1,000 years before, humans discovered faster-than-light travel. How many wars did the galactic community fight?" Yethera consulted her records, approximately 437 conflicts of various scales. "And in those wars, how many species were completely destroyed?" "None," Yethera replied. "Our codes of warfare prevent such outcomes." "How many continued fighting the same enemies over the same territories for generation after generation?" The silence that followed was answer enough. Commander Tae-Woo stepped forward from his position behind Admiral Su Jin. "Prime Counselor, since the Chronari incident, how many new wars have begun in galactic space?" "None," Yethera admitted quietly. "How many existing conflicts have been resolved through negotiation?" "7 so far," replied Ambassador Veltar. "A species that had been fighting for decades suddenly found ways to compromise." "And why do you think that is?" asked Admiral Su Dashkin. The answer came from an unexpected source. A small delegate from the Vorthan Republic, a species known for their timid nature, spoke up from the back of the chamber. "Because everyone is afraid," he said simply. "Not of you specifically, Admiral, but of what war might lead to now that humans are involved. Admiral Sujin turned to face the full council. That fear can become the foundation of lasting peace, but only if we handle it correctly. What are you proposing? Asked Prime Counselor Yathera. The formation of the Galactic Defense Corps, Sujin announced. Human warships will be stationed at key points throughout galactic space, not as occupation forces, but as deterrents. The chamber erupted in worried murmurs. Several delegates stood to voice concerns. You want to place human weapons throughout the galaxy? Demanded a representative from the militant coalition. I want to make large-scale warfare impossible too. Survive, Sujin replied calmly. Our ships will not patrol your territories or interfere in your governments. They will simply exist, visible and ready, as a reminder of what war has become. Colonel Jae-sung moved to the chamber's central display and activated a holographic map of galactic space. Each Defense Corps station will be clearly marked and openly operated. Any species that wishes to inspect our facilities may do so. Have nothing to hide? What about smaller conflicts? Asked Counselor Mirren. Territorial disputes between neighboring systems? Those will continue to be handled by existing galactic law, Admiral Sujin replied. The Defense Corps will only respond to conflicts that threaten multiple systems or involve weapons of mass destruction. Lieutenant Commander Mi Young stepped forward with a datapad. We have prepared detailed protocols for Defense Corps' intervention. The goal is not to choose sides in conflicts, but to ensure that no conflict escalates beyond containable levels. Ambassador Veltar studied the proposed protocols on his own device. You are offering to become our ... nuclear option. A threat so terrible that rational beings will not risk triggering it. Exactly, confirmed Admiral Sujin. We do not want to rule the galaxy. We want to stabilize it. Prime Counselor Yathera looked around the chamber at her fellow delegates. Many species that had been enemies for centuries were now sitting together, united by their shared concern about human military power. And if we refuse this proposal, she asked Admiral Sujin's. Expression remained neutral. Then humanity will continue to protect only its own territories and interests. The galaxy will return to its traditional cycle of warfare, but now everyone will know that humans exist and what we are capable of. The voting took place 3 hours later. The decision was unanimous, though not because every species loved the idea. They voted yes because the alternative, a galaxy where human weapons might be used against them, was too frightening to contemplate. As the session ended, Captain Minho approached Admiral Sujin privately. Do you really think this will work, Admiral? Sujin watched through the chamber's viewing ports as the first joint human galactic patrol ships launched from the station docks. Captain, for the first time in galactic history, every species in this chamber is more afraid of starting a war than of compromising with their enemies. Sometimes peace comes not from love, but from wisdom. The human warships took their positions throughout galactic space, and the galaxy discovered something it had never known before: the peace that comes from knowing that war had become too dangerous for anyone to survive.